So is that how I start?
Yeah, that's perfect. I just needed to, yes, that's lovely.
Yeah.
We just need to just check the levels to make sure we've got the sound correct.
Okay, right.
So,
We're rolling.
okay, ready. You can just start whenever you like.
Okay. And I will run out of things to say, so you'll have to prompt me.
Yes,
Okay.
don't worry.
And remind
I'll
me.
come in.
Okay.
Yes,
So, hi, I'm Sally, daughter of Gordon Procter, who arrived in Arizona in October 43 to learn to fly. He had left England, I think probably at least a month before, and his trip across the Atlantic was absolutely ghastly. So we grew up hearing tales, but not many tales, because he only really told us the fun bits, because his father had talked a lot about his terrible experience in World War I. So Daddy didn't want to inflict that on us. But I know he arrived in America after a horrendous journey and then was sent, I think, to Canada, and then on a train journey to Arizona. And the train journey, I think, lasted a week, so I'm not sure how that happened. And the loos weren't working properly, so that wasn't the pleasant journey he expected. But when he got to Arizona, he was absolutely bowled over by the food and the quantities of it, I suppose having come from England with rationing. And so I used to hear a lot about how wonderful the food was, and especially breakfasts, and he always liked cooking a big fry-up of everything for breakfast after that. In Arizona, he was billeted, I think, with 2 families, but I'm not absolutely sure about this. But he certainly made real friendships with 2 families, whose names I think were the McMasters and the Sewells. And again, you know, this is my memory. But he kept up with them for the rest of his life, and we used to think they were wonderful. I have a brother and sister, because in the 50s and 60s they sent us Christmas presents that were the best model cars and the best dolls that you ever saw. I mean, nothing like that available in England. Daddy absolutely loved his time in Arizona, and I think after that always thought of himself as an honorary American. I can't start. Sorry, I'll stop.
No, it's fine. You're good.
Sorry. What am I saying? Oh yeah, he loved his time in Arizona, and he used to tell us just tales of the fun things he did. And one of the things I remember, don't ask me how he did this, but my memory is that they used to throw loo rolls out of the plane and then fly through them to cut them up. So a very sort of grown-up thing to do while you're learning to fly. I forgot.
So what other memories can you think of that he shared? Like that, the toilet roll one, we've not heard that one at all. So were there other things that, what did he tell you different things he did? Did he ever go, for instance, did he ever meet any stars? Because some of them will meet stars.
No, I don't think he met any stars, but he took hundreds of photographs of cactus. And the big cactus with, you know, the sort of cartoon cactus, he was obsessed with those. So his photograph album is full of those. He always talked about the clear, clear blue skies. And this did cause him a bit of a problem. When he came back to England, he was sent from one airbase to another. And when he got back, he was hauled in for serious trouble, because they wanted to know why he had flown so ridiculously low on the journey. And he just said, well, it was cloudy and I had to follow the roads. I didn't know how else to get there. And his story goes that after that they realised they had to train the pilots trained in America how to navigate. But I believe pilots still follow the roads, so I'm not sure that that worked.
Did he ever share with you how he was taught to fly or anything, or how he found that experience?
No, he never told me how he was taught to fly, but he did have an instructor that he really liked, and who in the 70s lived in Malibu, because I know one time I was in Los Angeles with my father and we went and saw him. And if we'd been there longer, Daddy was really keen to take me up to Falcon Field to see it, but we didn't have enough time. But he and my parents lived in one house that they called Falcon Field. And he definitely says it was one of the happiest times of his life over there. He was rather disappointed when he came back because, of course, I presume like all the pilots wanted to be a Spitfire pilot, but he ended up going on leave and then coming back and being seconded into the army and then trained to fly Horsa gliders that he flew in Operation Varsity, which was the successful Rhine crossing. Why we have to make a film about the not successful one. Anyway, his stories of that are fairly horrific, in that he was given a stupid little gun, and which was, he always reckoned was only good enough to shoot yourself, not anybody else. And having landed, aged about 20, he was then in charge of the crew that were in the back of the glider.
So you think that he possibly lived with these people?
No, they were billeted on a family because they were young men, and so the family acted as surrogate mums and dads while they were there. And when they had time off, they could go to the families, and he was just, unless all people in Arizona are utterly delightful, he was extremely lucky because he formed real bonds with these people, and as I said, kept up with them for the rest of his life. And he did fly to America quite often because he was in advertising, and I know he would contact them and see them. And as I said, he also thought of himself as an honorary American, and American friends of mine always said that he didn't have an English accent on the telephone because he'd just mimic them, so he enjoyed that. Sorry.
No, go ahead, sorry.
I did. What else to say?
I'm sorry, I did your train of thought. Did he? But you had mentioned that that your mum and him went back for reunions.
Right. So in the early 2000s, he and my mother went back to Arizona for a Falcon Field Association reunion, and they definitely met up with friends. I mean, I think Daddy was probably late 70s, early 80s at the time. And he had trouble getting insurance for the flight or for the trip to America, so he was definitely elderly. And he loved it. And we do have a photograph album of that, but my sister's house was flooded and she's in rented accommodation, so I don't know where that is. But he also went to a reunion at Horse Guards Parade, and the photograph that I have of him then is, he's looking very old, so he must be in his 80s. He died at 84. So he's gone there with all his medals very proudly on his chest. And it was a very emotional day for him. And he always, he would mention the people that died in the training and his friends that died in the war. So it was a terrible time for these young men, and they were very, very young. So.
And I know that there was 24 people that died altogether just in the training alone. Did he know any of the people that he was with?
He kept up with a guy called Rick Brown, who I believe died after my father, but I'm not sure. And the terrible thing is, you wish you'd asked more questions when they were alive. And sadly, I don't know the answers to a lot of the questions I would have.
Are there any other memories you can think of that he had at the time? Did he have any, was there any pranks that he pulled?
Well, just the loo roll prank.
Did he mention anything about hitting cactuses?
I can't remember that.
Well, if they were his favourite thing, he probably didn't. Because some people will mention hitting the cactuses with their wings.
Oh, without doubt, my father would have been somebody doing that, because he was, by all accounts, a rather naughty young man. So, yeah, I'm sure he would have done everything that was going. But you don't always hear about it from your father, do you? No. I just know that his memories were wonderful. So it was the highlight of his youth, really.
How do you think what part do you think that experience played with him in his later life after that?
Well, he certainly felt that because the king and country had decided he was responsible enough to fly planes and be a pilot for his country, that his children were responsible enough to do whatever he thought they were. So we all drove his cars, rowed his boats, did everything that most people didn't get a chance to do at a very young age, and which was a huge responsibility for us because we knew we couldn't let him down, but very, very great fun as well.
What was your impression of Falcon Field when you went there?
Now, I haven't been there.
Ah, you've not been to Falcon
No,
Field?
I met his trainer in
I
Malibu, and my memory is that he had a handlebar moustache and looked like a pilot, but more than that I don't know. And that was in something like 76, so quite a long time ago.
Did your brothers or sisters ever go?
No, I don't think so. My mother went. My sister did go to Arizona, but I don't think she went to Falcon Field, but sadly.
Oh yes, you wouldn't, I don't suppose it would be somewhere you would necessarily go.
No.
What am I forgetting?
I was going to see, what sort of descriptions did he give you of either Arizona, just talking about maybe the surrounding area, or maybe about the people who house them? I know you spoke about that a little bit, but I just kind of want to bring that back up.
Well, he felt the people of Arizona were very, very welcoming and very generous and kind to all the pilots. And he thought the area, well, he loved the cactuses and he loved the clear blue skies. And he loved the heat. So, and of course he was only there from October to April 44, so he didn't have the summer heat. So I presume that meant he didn't have extremes of temperature. But he, as I said, he just loved it. And if he would have been allowed to, he'd have gone and lived in America, I think.
What else am I forgetting, Vince?
Trying to think. Out of the things that you saw on the counter, like all the photos and stuff, is there anything out of there that maybe is worth mentioning?
I could say he, in later life, he got involved with the Falcon Field Association, but he also spent a lot of time raising funds for the rebuilding of a Horsa glider, which was supposed to be used as a sort of training tool for Army Air Corps. But the main thing with Daddy, he would only talk about the fun things, so you didn't hear of the bad experiences. And he thought of himself as very, very lucky. And I do know at one point in England, he joined some bomber trip over Germany just for the experience. And when it was found out, he was in serious trouble that he had done that, but he just thought he was lucky, so he would be fine.
When did what age did he enlist? Did they come to him, or did he go to them?
He enlisted before he was 18, and he wasn't then called up until, I think, after he was 18, but he was very keen to get involved. So I'm sure his parents were furious with him, or at least his mother was, definitely. But I think he just thought he was lucky. So.
I don't know if I think you may have mentioned it. Did he keep in contact with a lot of the fellows from that?
No, I don't think he did really, no. I mean, he got involved later in life, and that was probably when he was living with us. So probably around 2000, around that time, he started doing things with the Falcon Field Association. And I think probably this Rick Brown got him involved. I'm not sure.
Where was Rick Brown? Where did he live? Do you remember?
Do you know, I don't know, but in the book What No Engines, he was also a glider pilot. And so he was a different... he trained in Oklahoma.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay. Well, funny enough, some people did go through Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So that wasn't unusual.
Yeah.
A lot of them seemed to go to New York, which is Canada. And
I think he went to Canada first and then trained on I don't know what route, but to Arizona.
Yes, it usually took them about 5 days on a train.
Yeah, yeah.
And some of them mentioned about how they would see like in Chicago, they would stop and they would see a celebrity.
I had nothing like that from my father, but he wouldn't recognise a celebrity if you put him
right.
here. Yeah.
Well, it took us quite a while yesterday to work out that it was Peter Lorre from Casablanca.
No, the only person he'd recognise would be James Bond. So that would be it. Yeah.
And then it used to take them about 5 to, that's interesting about the toilet, that's very interesting. And the boat trip, often they would be quite a long journey because they would have to zigzag.
Oh yeah,
So
because
they would
of
mention
the
that they would have to
well,
zigzag.
I believe in his boat trip out, the waves were so terrible that it damaged a gun fixture on the deck, which presumably was to protect them. And he was dreading the boat trip home, but the boat trip home was like a mill pond. So they were very lucky coming back. But it must have been terrifying, really, because you had German submarines and whatever in the Atlantic. So the whole thing, actually, I don't know how they lived through the war. It would have been hopeless.
But they did say about, yes, that zigzagging.
Yeah.
And was there a particular food that he liked?
Breakfast was his, he just thought breakfast was wonderful, and he would love, after that, but all my life he loved cooking breakfast for everybody, about the only thing he ever did cook, but he would empty the fridge of anything he thought he could put with breakfast. And when I met him in New York on business trips and things, we always had to go out for a splendid breakfast, you know, with everything.
That was his favourite
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I thought of something else right then. No, it's gone.
Can I just grab it from you again? Just your intro again. Just give me your name. So hi, my name is, and I'm the daughter of.
Okay.
And then maybe just say people the pilot.
Yeah. Okay. How?
Oh, sorry. And if you can add that he was on course 6.
Yeah. Yeah. So my name's Sally. I'm the daughter of Gordon Procter, who trained at Arizona on course 6 at Falcon Field. He arrived in October 43 and left in April 44, and was then based in various places in England and eventually seconded to the Army Air Corps to fly a Horsa glider in Operation Varsity.
Did he ever mention about any dances?
Yeah, vague memories,
or
but I
singing
can't.
or-
No, yeah, vague. I don't really remember that.
And then what about church?
I don't remember that either.
Right,
No, he wasn't a great church goer.
person,
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't remember any of that. But presumably the Americans were more religious than us at the time.
Maybe, I
or
don't
maybe
know.
we were too at the time, actually.
But I think quite, yes, it seemed like a few people would end up going to church.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's the only reason
No,
I
he
mentioned
didn't.
it. And then,
No, I don't remember him talking about that. No.
and then there was the dances that got mentioned, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
Perhaps because he knew my mother from before the war, that I didn't hear those stories. I don't know.
oh, probably not.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, probably wouldn't have done.
No.
Cool. And then I was gonna ask for one more line, just because we had a bit of interference. If you could just say in the early 2000s.
Just say in the early 2000s.
Yeah, but just kind of at a bit more of a.
Oh, so in the early 2000s, he.
That was it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that was when you were talking about going back for
A reunion.
but-
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think you started with, you said 200 and then you went.
Oh, yeah,
2000. So
2000.
Just for
Yeah,
editing's sake,
yeah,
it'd be a bit
yeah.
easier, but yeah,
Sorry.
that's all right.
We're good?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we're good.
I hope that was all right.
You know what though, Sally? Do you want me to grab the pictures and see if there's anything that
Well,
particularly springs to
Well,
mind?
come in there. Oh God,
Yes.
sorry. Sorry, smashed.
You want to just stick that in your pocket, that's all right.
Yeah. Okay.
If anything particularly springs to mind. It might not, but you never know.
Oh, look. Did
And
they?
they weren't meant to.
Okay.
They got in trouble for it.
Oh, well, I
And in
think
fact, it was the only time this one pilot actually lied. He said, I've never lied at all in my entire life. He said, the only time I lied was when I was asked if I had a car. And I lied and said, no, I didn't. But he said, I actually did.
okay.
And he said, I've never forgiven myself for that.
I think one of the reasons my father adored the two families, at least I think two families that he was billeted with, is one of them definitely let him drive their cars. And I think that probably started a lifelong passion with cars. When he died, he owned 46 cars in various states of disrepair or repair. But he was very impressed with the American cars. So as I said, it's a lifelong passion. He used to race cars, rally cars, things like Monte Carlo Rally, and this obsession with owning them.
Oh, that's excellent. That's really good.
That's nice.
Funnily enough, the very first person we interviewed,
I think it was 36, actually, not 46. But anyway, ridiculous numbers.
the very first person we interviewed, his partner is big into racing.